With all of the fancy stuff we have now, it's easy to forget just how much of a technical marvel the PS2 was in its day. In a period of less than 10 years, graphics went from colorful sprites to chunky polygons before finally going crazy with intricate models, geometry, and lighting engines. The jump from 2D to 3D was a huge deal, but going from 32 and 64 bits to 128 with the next gen was revolutionary. Of course, consoles like the GameCube and Xbox would introduce even greater fidelity with incredible titles of their own, but for a brief time, Sony's PlayStation 2 was the premier video game platform with experiences that are still talked about today. One of the most fondly remembered of these is none other than Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy, developed by the one and only Naughty Dog. Hot off the success of the PlayStation Crash Bandicoot games, these guys were on fire, and while the Crash series would have a notable presence during the 6th gen, sometimes for the worst of reasons, Naughty Dog endured, evolving with every project until they cemented themselves among the industry's greats, remaining one of its foremost juggernauts to this day. I remember bringing this exact copy home from a Blockbuster of all places. It was one of those weird ones where you could buy stuff as well as rent it. It's important not to get too hung up on it. Anyway, it has a greatest hits banner, so it couldn't have been too new, but that didn't stop me and my older siblings from loving every second of it. These days, it's a little worse for wear. The disc is all scratched up and the map is missing, but that wear and tear is a testament to how loved this game was. I've since picked up a new copy that's near identical, though I'd be lying if I didn't say I wish it was a black label. Anyway, I thought it would be fun to go back and revisit this one. It's been a while since I last played it, and the video I made way back when has aged like milk. So today, we're talking about Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy. Not this one. This one. PS2 has an easier time reading it. Our tale begins with a small act of disobedience, as Jak and his very much humanoid friend Daxter travel to the forbidden Misty Island. After witnessing a bit of a conspiracy, the two are assailed by a lurker, with Daxter taking a dip in a vat of dark eco, which transforms him into an Ottsel. Visiting Samos the Sage, the two find out that the only way to change him back is by traveling a great distance to the master of dark eco, Gall Acheron. So it's up to the duo to journey to his citadel in the north, all the while collecting precursor artifacts like orbs and power cells along the way. It's your standard Collect-A-Thon fare. Explore levels, fight bad guys, and get a hit of dopamine with every MacGuffin grabbed. This was 2001, so the genre was still riding high above the rest, and contemporary influences are front and center. You've got the buddy dynamic a la Banjo, free-flowing exploration from Spyro, and ever-precise platforming courtesy of Plumber Boy Mario. Of course, who can forget the most obvious inspiration, Crash? Hell, the whole game's pretty much an evolution of the main trilogy, what with everything being elevated to a higher level. Jak's moveset is a pretty solid combination of them all too. Punching, spinning, double jumping, cannonballing, it all feels super well done. Every action has an individual purpose, and finding ways to use all of them in conjunction with one another is among the most satisfying things to be done in a platformer. And you aren't just limited to what Jak himself can pull off, as you can also make use of various eco-types whenever possible. There's green, which is the most basic in acting as the game's health, but also blue, which increases movement speed and has a sort of magnet effect on pickups while also breaking and activating things, as well as red that buffs your attacks, and yellow that lets you fire projectiles. Again, they all serve a very express purpose, and with the exception of red eco, which shows up the least, provide an interesting way to change things up. Of course, the most important items are the orbs and power cells, with the former acting as a type of currency and the latter granting you access to further areas of the game. While some of them can be found in the open just waiting to be picked up, the majority call for a type of mini-quest to be completed before you can actually get your hands on them. Activating eco-vents, defeating a boss, that sort of thing. Along with these are the scout flies, handy little inventions courtesy of Samos' daughter Kira. Every area has 7 hidden away in metal crates, and when all are gathered, reward you with a power cell. The rest are acquired through haggling with NPCs willing to make a trade. These can be the town mayor, a geologist, hilarious miners, or even precursor statues that charge way more than anyone else. My favorite's always been the disgraced warrior. Poor guy gets his ass kicked by a giant, and all Daxter can do is tell him to stop crying about it.
Oh, my aching head.
Hey, that's one of your vital organs.
Walk it off, tough guy!
Of course, after every power cell nabbed is the obligatory celebration, complete with booming fanfare and a humorous performance courtesy of this little bastard. With 101 of them, you're gonna be seeing this song and dance quite a bit, but much like nabbing a star or Jiggy, it never gets old. Neither does the requisite hunting. Whether it's the rock-solid gameplay loop, level design, or satisfying control, trekking through the game's 16 or so levels is never a boring time. The environments are all distinct from one another and beautiful to look at, with an equally impressive use of colors and exclusive enemy types that lend to their individuality. The best part is, the entire game is presented as an open world of sorts, with no visual barriers or stops dividing levels. Day turns to night, the terrain and even weather changes. It's entirely seamless. The most you run into are cleverly masked loading elevators, which somehow extend the overall scope even further. Not only that, but making use of clever camera angles, Naughty Dog was able to mask the real-time loading of the overworld areas, and even now, 2 decades after this game's release, I'm still blown away by the ingenuity. I love how you can stand on top of the Forbidden Temple and see the blimp far off in the distance. I adore how the peak of Snowy Mountain allows you a glimpse at not only the Citadel, but also every other area spanning back to Sandover Village. It really feels like you can go just about anywhere the eye can see in this game. That is, until a lurker shark gobbles your ass up.
Is that it?
Of course, the journey itself is just as great, with tons of platforming guaranteed to satiate your needs. It's also where Jak's moveset is expanded upon, being able to clear large gaps with the spin kick as well as swinging from poles. On the flip side, you've got the long jump, which can be used to take out enemies. Sweet. I suppose I should at least touch on how versatile Jak's attacks are. Like, you've got the standard punch, which does a solid enough job defeating most enemies in one hit, but if you want to get fancy with it, you can always perform an uppercut or dive attack. The point is, there's a ton of stuff at your disposal, and if you ever find yourself becoming bored, it's because you're not being creative enough. Throw in a Shoryuken every once in a while, it won't hurt. I mean, it'll hurt the lurker, but that's kind of the point. Dotted here and there are also a few pretty well done vehicle sections, be it Agrav Zoomer racing or Flut platforming. Their quality is a testament to how well vehicle levels can complement the experience without worming their way into becoming the main focus. The Zoomer levels have always been among my favorites, with the time challenges in the Precursor Basin and Ride Through Lava Tube being particular highs. I'd even go as far as saying Flut's one of the best animal companions in a game, right up there with the buddies from Donkey Kong Country. Jumping, fluttering, being able to shoot yellow eco, that's one badass bird. Daxter should be honored to be its mama.
Oh no! No, 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 no!
Everything's perfectly balanced, with no one aspect overstaying its welcome, and for that, I'd say this is easily one of the best platformers for not only newcomers to the genre, but longtime fans as well. My only real gripe, if you even want to call it that, is how easy it can be. There are plenty of insta-deaths and spots where the platforming gets to be intense, but with the enemies only taking about 1 or 2 hits, on top of not having to worry about extra lives, you'll be hard-pressed to find moments where your skills are legitimately tested. Even then, during the rare instances where you are swarmed by a ton of lurkers, you're given red or yellow eco, which all but demolishes the playing field. Anytime I died, I can honestly attribute to my controller being finicky. No idea what the problem was either, but on top of the UI randomly triggering, Jak would just roll off of ledges like he knew it was inconvenient, and I can confidently say that if that never happened, I could probably have beaten the game without any deaths. Then again, only ever dying this way also meant that I couldn't talk about the Daxter death screens, so I hope you appreciate that I went back and died on purpose just to get some footage.
You've no idea how exhausting it was having to power on the OSSC and PS2.
Say goodnight, Jak.
I know some people have trouble completing the fishing and swamp shooting challenges, and I'm not even trying to be a dick when I say this, but, get good? I mean, sure, I had a hard time with these. when I was a little kid. Regardless, any shortcomings this game may have are almost immediately overshadowed by the undeniable good, be it the aesthetic, writing, or brilliant design. Josh Mansell really knocked the soundtrack out of the park too. There's still a bit of a crashy feeling with many of the tracks, which is to be expected, but they all have these incredible tones that range from adventurous to dangerous, and even downright spooky. Spider Cave has a palpable sense of dread, what with its booming key strikes and percussion that almost mimics the noise of dripping water. I also find that it sounds a bit like Pink Floyd's Time, which is pretty awesome. If you couldn't already tell, I think this game is a goddamn treasure trove of quality from beginning to end. Like, it's got the gameplay, the style, the tude that we associate with classic 3D platformers, and not only that, it is without any semblance of a doubt among the greatest titles to have released on the PS2. Speaking of, this game, along with its two sequels, was later released on the PS3 and Vita as a sort of HD collection. At the time, it was a much more convenient way to experience the trilogy, but now that the days of the 7th gen have come and gone, it's nearly as much of a hassle as playing it on the OG hardware. There were those PS4 and 5 ports which I've heard mixed things about, but I've gotta say, at this moment in time, the best way to experience Jak and Daxter is on PC. Yeah, leave it to the fans to figure out the best way to play, as the folks behind OpenGOAL have made possible what Sony themselves could not. I guess there was that comment Evan Wells made about mass media being able to piece together the spaghetti that was Jak 1, so it only makes sense that in order to get the game working natively, because believe it or not, this is an emulation, these madmen recreated Naughty Dog's original Gold language from scratch. This allows just about anyone with a decent rig to enjoy the project's many quality of life improvements, like higher frame rates, resolutions, camera controls, and get this, an option to make the orbs glow. Now, OpenGOAL's development is still ongoing, but I was able to play through the entirety of the game without any graphical or stability issues. I even installed 4K textures just to make everything prettier, and I can safely say it's my new preferred way to play. I think what really sells it is just the game's cartoony look. Like, you know how cel-shaded games and really toon-like games have this sort of newfound life these days just because they weren't beholden to some weird, realistic graphic style? Like, dude, there are so many PS2 games that at the time it was like, wow, that looks just like real life, but now it's like, this is horrible. Oh my god. I think that's what helps this, because Naughty Dog didn't try to make it look realistic, they just made it look good, and therefore it looks good still. It also gets bonus points for the implementation of secrets, with classics like Big Head Mode and even a mirrored world setting. Alright, that's awesome. I didn't know how much I needed a Jak and Daxter Master Quest until now. There have even been a few advancements on the modding front, with not just cut content being re-implemented, but also Jak visiting Insanity Beach, Outset Island, and even Firelink Shrine. What I'm most excited for is easily the multiplayer, as being a kid with two older siblings, we had to make many single-player games work by just passing the controller around, but the possibility of having multiple Jaks gallivanting through levels is a whole different ballgame. Reminds me of the Mario 64 multiplayer mod. So good. The best part is, OpenGOAL is 100% free, and all you need is a Jak and Daxter ISO, which can be found easily since it wasn't made by Nintendo. And it ain't stopping at the first game either. Both Jak 2 and 3 are planned to be released, with the second game currently being decompiled, so if you're looking to experience either of those on PC, definitely stay tuned. I guess that also means if I want to continue talking about this series, I'll have to wait until Jak 2 releases for OpenGOAL. Fine, we'll pick things up then.